What if the most important player on the Cleveland Browns right now isn't even on the field? That's the question fans, analysts, and even rival teams are suddenly asking after a moment so electric, so unexpected, that it sent shockwaves across the entire NFL landscape. A rookie quarterback who hasn't thrown a single regular season pass somehow managed to flip the energy of an entire stadium, ignite his teammates, and spark a comeback that Browns fans are already calling one of the most unforgettable moments in recent memory. His name is Shedeur Sanders, and whether the Browns are ready to admit it or not, his impact is impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about a game-winning kick. This was about a rookie turning into a cultural force overnight, from the locker room to the fan base, from social media to national talk shows. The question now isn't if Shedeur Sanders will start for Cleveland, it's when. But before we get there, let's go back to the exact moment it all began, when the Browns looked dead in the water and everything suddenly changed. The story begins in Cleveland, late in the fourth quarter, when hope was already gone. The Browns trailed the Packers by 10. Joe Flacco looked like a statue in the pocket, throwing short checkdowns that went nowhere. The playbook felt ancient, predictable, and powerless against Green Bay's suffocating defense. Fans had seen this movie before, the same frustration, the same heartbreak, and thousands were already streaming towards the exits. Inside Huntington Bank Stadium, the energy was flat, silent, defeated. And then, in a blink, everything flipped. Jordan Love dropped back on third down, looking to bury Cleveland once and for all. But safety Grant Delpit jumped the route, snatching the ball out of the air and racing it back into Packers territory. The crowd roared to life. The defense exploded off the sideline. For the first time all game, there was a heartbeat. But what the cameras captured next wasn't just an interception. It was the spark of a phenomenon. On the sideline, wearing a headset and holding a clipboard, Shedeur Sanders erupted. He wasn't even on the field, but the rookie quarterback was chest-bumping veterans, screaming at teammates, waving his arms to fire up the crowd. He carried himself like the spark plug Cleveland didn't even know it had. Linemen who had been slouched on the bench were suddenly locked in. Wide receivers started pacing with intensity. Defensive players came off the field grinning, energized, feeding off Sanders like he'd just thrown the touchdown himself. And then the unthinkable happened. Rookie running back Quinshon Judkins punched in a one-yard score to tie the game. With just over 3 minutes left, the Browns were alive again. And all eyes, from the crowd to the cameras to the veterans on the field, turned to the rookie on the sideline. Shedeur Sanders wasn't calling plays, he wasn't reading defenses, but in that moment, he was the heartbeat of the Cleveland Browns. And that was only the beginning. When the final whistle blew, it wasn't just the Browns' improbable comeback that had people talking. It was the rookie on the sideline, the kid who hadn't thrown a single pass but somehow stole the entire show. The moment Andre Smith's 55-yard kick sailed through the uprights, the cameras zeroed in on Shedeur Sanders. Headset still on, chest heaving, he lost it. Jumping, screaming, grabbing every teammate in sight, arms raised high as if he just won the Super Bowl. The emotion was raw, contagious, and very, very real. And in today's NFL, where everything lives or dies on social media, that kind of moment doesn't just disappear, it explodes. Within 7 minutes of the game ending, the first clip of Sanders' celebration hit Twitter. The caption was simple: "This is why we need Shedeur on the field." What happened next was unlike anything Cleveland had ever seen.
That single video racked up 47,000 retweets, 156,000 likes, and tens of thousands of comments in just the first hour. But it didn't stop there. TikTok creators jumped in, dissecting every frame, slowing down his reactions, adding music, splicing it with highlights from his Colorado days. Before the night was over, the hashtag Shedeur was trending nationwide. Instagram lit up with posts from NFL players. Odell Beckham Jr. threw fire emojis on his story. Baker Mayfield shared the clip without a word, letting the energy speak for itself. By Monday morning, the clip had spread across every major platform. Twitter, 2.3 million interactions. TikTok, 800+ videos using the footage, generating over 12 million views. YouTube reaction channels pulling nearly 2 million views in just 24 hours. And then came the national media. Stephen A. Smith opened First Take with a rant declaring, "Joe Flacco didn't win that game. Stefanski didn't win that game. The fire that sparked that comeback came from Shedeur Sanders on that sideline." Moments later, Shannon Sharpe was calling Sanders a cultural force who made the Browns relevant beyond wins and losses. What had started as a rookie cheering for his teammates had instantly become one of the most viral NFL moments of the year. And inside the Browns organization, players were already talking about what everyone else was thinking. If Shedeur could spark a miracle comeback without even stepping on the field, what would happen if he actually got the chance to play? While social media went nuclear, the more important story was happening behind closed doors. Inside the Browns locker room, veterans and rookies alike weren't just talking about the blocked kick or the miracle comeback. They were talking about Shedeur Sanders. Players who had been around long enough to see every failed quarterback experiment in Cleveland were suddenly buzzing about a rookie who hadn't even touched the field. One offensive lineman, speaking off the record, put it bluntly, "Shedeur wasn't just cheerleading out there, he was coaching guys up, pointing out adjustments, keeping us locked in when everyone else was ready to quit. That's leadership you can't fake." Defensive players echoed the same sentiment. Grant Delpy, whose interception sparked the comeback, gave Sanders the credit. "The first person I saw celebrating was Shedeur. He was going crazy, and that energy spread through the whole team. It's contagious, man. It makes you want to fight harder." And even the special teams felt it. Before Andre Smith lined up for the game-winning 55-yarder, nerves were written all over his face, but multiple sources confirmed Shedeur walked over, put an arm around him, and said something that calmed him down. Seconds later, Smith drilled the biggest kick of his young career. Veterans who usually play it safe with media comments didn't hide their admiration. Joel Bitonio, the longest-tenured Brown, admitted the rookie brought a spark that felt different than anything we've had in years. Wyatt Teller called Sanders' sideline presence the heartbeat of the comeback. Inside that locker room, the message was clear. This wasn't just about a rookie quarterback standing on the sideline. This was about a young leader who had already won the respect of the locker room without taking a single snap. And that's where things got complicated, because the players weren't the only ones noticing. The coaching staff, the front office, and even ownership were all forced to confront a new reality. Cleveland suddenly had a quarterback controversy, and it wasn't going away. For head coach Kevin Stefanski, Sunday's comeback wasn't just a thrilling win, it was a problem. Because while Joe Flacco was still technically the starter, everyone from fans to media to players could see the truth. The energy shift came from Shedeur Sanders, and that put Stefanski in the crosshairs of one of the toughest decisions of his coaching career. At his Monday press conference, the questions came fast. Would Shedeur see more reps? Could there be a quarterback change? How long can a rookie with that kind of impact stay on the bench? Stefanski smiled, deflected, and gave his typical answer. "We evaluate every position every week. Joe is our starter. Shedeur is doing a great job developing." But behind the scenes, the pressure was building. Owner Jimmy Haslam, who had personally pushed for drafting Sanders despite scouts projecting him as a fifth-rounder, reportedly told close associates that Sunday validated his instincts. To him, Shedeur wasn't just a project, he was the future and maybe the present. General manager Andrew Berry found himself caught in the middle. His staff had built an offseason game plan around Flacco and his veteran stability. The offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, had designed plays tailored to Flacco's strengths, but quarterback coach Bill Musgrave was quietly impressed with Sanders' growth, hinting that the rookie might be ahead of schedule. One team executive described the situation as delicate but unavoidable. Nobody questioned Sanders' talent. The debate wasn't if he could play, it was when. Push him too early and you risk stunting his development. Wait too long and you risk losing the locker room and alienating a fan base that has already chosen his guy.
And then there was the Stefanski factor. The head coach knew he was under scrutiny. Every loss tightened the leash. Every stubborn decision was magnified by viral hashtags and national debate shows. For the first time, the question wasn't just about the Browns' quarterback depth chart. It was about whether Kevin Stefanski could survive keeping Shedeur Sanders on the sideline.
The dilemma was clear. Stick with Flacco, and the Browns risked looking tone-deaf and lifeless. Elevate Sanders, and the entire trajectory of the franchise could change, for better or for worse. The Browns were no longer just playing football games, they were playing with fire. If the Browns thought the story would fade after Sunday's win, they were wrong. In fact, the real storm was just beginning. By Monday morning, every major sports outlet had shifted the conversation. It wasn't about Joe Flacco's stat line or the blocked field goal. It was about the rookie quarterback who hadn't even stepped on the field, Shedeur Sanders. ESPN's First Take dedicated nearly its entire opening block to Sanders' sideline explosion. Stephen A. Smith shouted into the camera, insisting Cleveland was committing football malpractice by leaving him on the bench. Shannon Sharpe went even further, calling Sanders a cultural force who made the Browns relevant beyond wins and losses. NFL Network rolled out a one-hour special titled The Sanders Effect, featuring former quarterbacks breaking down his leadership qualities as if he had just engineered a 2-minute drill in the Super Bowl. Dan Orlovsky praised Shedeur's poise, while Kurt Warner argued that sometimes you don't wait for development, you throw a guy in and let the magic happen. Even Monday Night Countdown joined the frenzy, analyzing Sanders' body language side by side with clips of Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Exaggerated? Maybe, but it didn't matter. The narrative had shifted. And it wasn't just sports media. Sports Illustrated ran a feature titled The Sanders Effect: How a Fifth-Round Pick is Changing Cleveland's Culture. The Athletic pushed out daily updates tracking his popularity, engagement numbers, and even ticket sales. Local stations joined in, sending cameras to track Sanders at practice like he was already the starter. Talk radio was swamped with callers demanding he play. And social media? It was still on fire, with hashtags like #StartShedeur trending alongside national politics and celebrity scandals. What was unfolding went beyond football. It was a media circus, a cultural wave that Cleveland couldn't control. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just a rookie anymore. He was a storyline too big to contain. And while the hype machine was reaching its peak, something even more powerful was happening. The fans themselves were taking over. If social media gave Shedeur Sanders his spark, the fans poured gasoline on it. Within 48 hours of that Green Bay game, Cleveland had transformed into Shedeur City. Replica jerseys with his number were the hottest item in the team shop, outselling Joe Flacco jerseys by a margin so wide it was almost embarrassing. Local vendors couldn't keep up with demand. Shirts, hoodies, even handmade signs with slogans like "We want Shedeur" were everywhere. Bars and restaurants jumped in, creating Shedeur-themed menus. A downtown pub offered the Shedeur Special, a burger and beer combo, half-priced every time his highlight clips hit the big screen. Retail shops near the stadium plastered their windows with photos of the rookie quarterback, while street vendors outside sold bootleg t-shirts that disappeared in minutes. But the real force wasn't merchandise, it was unity. Fan pages on Facebook and Twitter turned into full-blown campaign headquarters. The hashtag #StartShedeur spread like wildfire, with fans creating their own highlight reels, comparison graphics, and viral memes pushing the narrative that the rookie wasn't just the future, he was the present. Local radio stations were overwhelmed with callers. One Cleveland sports show ran a poll asking fans if Shedeur should start the next game against Detroit. The result? 89% said yes. For a franchise long divided by quarterback debates, the message was shockingly clear. And this wasn't just Northeast Ohio. Browns backers across the country, in New York, Atlanta, Chicago, and Los Angeles, organized watch parties not for the team's games, but for the chance to catch even a glimpse of Sanders on the sideline. The phenomenon bled into pop culture. Cleveland-born comedian Drew Carey posted videos in support of Sanders starting. Local musicians dropped lyrics referencing him. Street artists painted murals across downtown, turning Shedeur into a symbol of hope for a city that had been searching for decades. Even the mayor publicly acknowledged the buzz, calling Sanders a reflection of Cleveland's resilient spirit.
For a rookie who hadn't played a single snap, this was unprecedented. He wasn't just a quarterback prospect anymore. He was a movement. And as the city rallied behind him, Cleveland's rivals started taking notice and preparing for what might come next. The Sanders phenomenon wasn't just a Cleveland story anymore. Across the AFC North, division rivals were paying attention, and some were quietly concerned. For years, teams like the Ravens, Steelers, and Bengals had grown used to preparing for the Browns with one consistent advantage: predictability. Veteran quarterbacks like Joe Flacco were statues in the pocket. You knew where they'd be, you knew their tendencies, and you could game plan with confidence. But Shedeur Sanders, he represented something entirely different. Baltimore's defensive coordinator Mike McDonald admitted as much when reporters asked him about Cleveland's situation. "We've got plenty of film on Joe Flacco. We know his strengths, limitations, the concepts he prefers. But Sanders changes that. Mobility, arm strength, improvisation. That's a different challenge. You have to prepare for chaos." Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin, never one to overhype an opponent, still acknowledged the shift. When players and fans rally around someone like that, it creates energy that can't be ignored. "We'll prepare for whoever lines up across from us, but it's clear Cleveland has something interesting brewing." And in Cincinnati, defensive end Trey Hendrickson gave the most blunt assessment. "Flacco's a veteran, but he's not going anywhere. A young guy like Sanders, he moves, he extends plays. That changes the pass rush completely. You can't pin him down the way you can a pocket guy." What was once a feel-good local story had now turned into a scouting nightmare for the Browns' fiercest rivals. They didn't know when Shedeur would play, they didn't know how much he'd play, but they knew, sooner or later, they'd have to face him. And that uncertainty, that unpredictability, was already an advantage for Cleveland. But as rivals scrambled to figure out the rookie, the Browns themselves faced a much bigger problem: how to manage the overwhelming spotlight heading into their next game against Detroit. By the time the Browns began preparing for their Week 4 matchup with the Detroit Lions, practice looked less like football and more like a media spectacle. Every beat reporter in Cleveland showed up early. National outlets sent camera crews. Even casual fans found ways to sneak glimpses from fences and parking lots, and all of them were watching the same thing: Shedeur Sanders. Every throw he made in warm-ups got posted to Twitter within seconds. Every huddle he stepped into was dissected on talk shows. Clips of him laughing with teammates went viral as proof of leadership. Analysts paused practice footage to break down his footwork like it was film study for the playoffs. Inside the facility, head coach Stefanski tried to project calm. He insisted Joe Flacco was still the starter. But the truth was obvious. The rookie was getting more reps, and everyone noticed. Multiple insiders confirmed that Sanders' workload had quietly expanded, a clear sign the coaching staff was preparing for contingencies, even if they weren't ready to admit it publicly. And the fans? They weren't waiting for contingencies. Chants of "We want Shedeur" echoed through Huntington Bank Stadium during open practices. Homemade signs flooded the bleachers. Thousands of fans showed up in Sanders jerseys on game week, even though he wasn't expected to play a single snap. Veterans inside the locker room noticed his composure under the circus. Left tackle Joel Bitonio told reporters, "Shedeur's not letting the noise change him. He's working, studying, and supporting Joe like always. That's how you know he's ready." Center Ethan Posick added, "The kid's handling this like a 10-year vet. Nothing rattles him." Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the organization was feeling the squeeze. Owner Jimmy Haslam attended multiple practices. Corporate sponsors called about advertising tied directly to Sanders. Ticket sales spiked. Local TV ratings jumped. The Browns weren't just managing a quarterback room, they were managing an economic wave.
And all of it built to one boiling point: Sunday's game. By the time game day arrived, anticipation was off the charts. News stations covered Shedeur's bus arrival like it was a presidential motorcade. Fans mobbed the stadium, tailgating with his college highlights playing on giant screens. Pre-game chants thundered before kickoff. "We want Shedeur! We want Shedeur!" The Browns hadn't seen this kind of frenzy in decades. Whether he played or not almost didn't matter. The rookie quarterback had already transformed the entire atmosphere of Cleveland football. The only question left was whether Stefanski and the Browns were ready to unleash him. By the time Sunday arrived, it no longer mattered whether Shedeur Sanders threw a pass, handed off the ball, or never left the sideline. He had already changed the Cleveland Browns. What started as a sideline celebration had turned into a cultural wave, uniting fans, energizing teammates, and forcing an entire organization to face questions it wasn't ready to answer. For a franchise that has cycled through quarterbacks like a revolving door, Sanders represented something rare: hope. The blocked kick, the comeback, the viral explosion, those moments weren't just about football, they were about belief. For the first time in decades, the Browns had a figure who could rally a fractured fan base and make Cleveland feel alive again. And that's what makes this story bigger than one game, bigger than one season. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just fighting for a spot on the depth chart, he's fighting to become the face of a franchise that has been searching for its identity since 1999. He's proving that leadership doesn't always come from playbooks or stats. Sometimes it comes from presence, charisma, and an unshakable belief that things can be different. The question now isn't if Shedeur will get a shot, it's when. And when that moment finally comes, when he steps under center with the weight of Cleveland on his shoulders, it won't just be another game. It will be the defining chapter of a story that began on the sideline with a rookie who refused to let his team quit. For the Browns, and for their fans, this could be the beginning of a new era. The only thing left to find out is whether Shedeur Sanders is ready to turn belief into history.